Hey everyone, I'm Coach Chippys and I've been a professional top laner or head coach for the past 8 years. During this time I've reached Worlds and MSI multiple times. Now I'm a full-time coach with a ton of passion towards helping players unlock their potential and climb to their dream rank. Welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be covering exactly how to flank in teamfights, because flanking is such a key part about teamfighting against so many top lane champions, so we're going to be covering not only how to do so, but also the conditions for when it's good as well. Now I'm going to be breaking it down into 5 concepts, and I will start with the most important concept by far, and that is holding your spells. You're not always going to be able to flank unseen, hiding in a bush, get that perfect 5-man cannon ulti. More often than not, if you're versus players that know what they're doing, you're going to be spotted, and I see a lot of people make the mistake of, oh, there's a couple people seeing me, they're running towards me, I'm going to flash cannon ulti now, flash jack stun, when really holding your spells is going to be a lot more important and putting pressure on your opponents to make a mistake. So I have an example here, my favorite example by far of this concept, where Ben is playing Jax, and he has a really good flank. However, they do know he's here, of course, so he really has to become comfortable in being spotted, which is the main point about holding your spells, the main skill you need to develop, because if you're extremely comfortable when the enemy champion sees you, the enemy team sees you, run towards you, use spells on you, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to hold your spells than if you feel extremely pressured. So here, Ben's literally just isking, looking at them, moving around a little bit, but he's not feeling pressured at all. Until this Tristana jumps on top of him, then he utilizes his first spell. He uses his E, beats him down, and this whole time he's still holding onto his Q, right? Holding onto his other major spell. He's waiting around now for his next E. He's not feeling pressured at all to jump in. His team's fighting, but the enemy team is so pressured they feel like if they engage on his teammates, he's of course going to get this great flank. And this fight is already starting off as a 4v5, so of course it's going to be in the blue team's favor. But Ben's extremely comfortable in this situation. Even now, when Raul gets this great stun, Ben knows that if I were to pop my E right now, this Malphite would stop me. As you saw, he queued him away. So he's holding onto his E until now. He's stunned, and then he gets the flash E onto Tristana and then jumps in. So as you can see, holding his spells here was basically the difference maker in this fight, where his team had to play it a 4v5, but he was putting pressure on the enemy team for at least 30 to 40 seconds until they made a mistake. Tristana used a poor W, Maokai wasted his Q, and Jax was able to get this great flank whilst baiting the enemy team spells because he was holding onto his own ones. Now I'm going to show one more example from a recent solo queue game I played, because of course in the previous example, Ben was playing in a competitive match. He knows all of his teammates are extremely good, so if he flanks for a long time and holds his spells, there's a low chance they're going to get caught out, where that's not the case for me in the solo queue game. My team has been getting caught out the whole game. I'll try to pause on the tab right now. You can see they have high defs, most of them. They've been getting caught out non-stop, but that doesn't change my role in this fight. I can't really look to front to back on Olaf in this game, especially without my flash up, so here I really need to be looking to flank. So here, of course, I'm in a high yellow game. They're going to be warding their flanks like this. I have to sweep out the area. Not sweep out, but clear out the wards around me. And now I'm putting a ton of pressure on them. They feel like if they engage on my team, of course, I'm going to ghost and catch up to them and flank. They feel like if they engage on the dragon, fully commit, I'm going to flank as well. So now they are trying to mark the flank, where Rel is Hex flashing, Ashe is over the wall volleying me, you can see, and now it could be very tempting when this Rel cues me for me to use my ulti, my ghost or anything, but as you can see, I'm holding my spells this whole time. I'm holding it until they fully commit, until Rel jumps onto me, then I use my ulti and ghost because I know they are fully committed to the fight, and now we're actually able to win this one. So holding my spells there was the difference maker, where if I pop my ulti or ghost when Rel cued me, he would have just walked away and waited till those spells were on cooldown, and then he would have re-engaged later on, but I wouldn't have the tools necessary to win this fight. So to summarize holding spells, the main point of it is when you're flanking your opponents, don't feel pressure to use your spells straight away. Hold on to them till the perfect opportunity, and that opportunity is going to be when they make a mistake. And the mistake is going to be different in every single team fight. It's either going to be they waste a key ability of their own trying to engage on your team or trying to engage on you, or if somebody mispositions. If they break their formation, of course you can commit then, but if they're clumped up nicely, they're respecting you, don't feel pressured to go in, because when you're holding your spells, that is putting a lot of pressure on them to react, putting pressure on them to make a mistake. Where let's say, for example, you're staring at them as Jax, like in that example earlier, if he queued in, they would not have to make a choice, right? They don't have to think about what they're doing, they're just going to turn and hit the Jax. However, if he holds onto his spells this whole time, and he's standing behind them, looking at them, they feel extremely pressured to either turn on him, turn on his teammates, and it's very hard for all 5 players, especially in a solo queue game, to be on the same page. They might even split up and break formation, which is going to be the perfect time for you to punish. Up next, we'll be covering TP flanking. Now, TP flanking is a great skill to utilize to catch your opponents off guard, but I see so many people go about it the wrong way. The biggest mistake I see top laners make is their TP usage is very reactionary. Or even if you get a great TP flank, if you're just reacting to what's happening, let's say your team gets caught or gets engaged on and you just TP in, more often than not, the play is already going to be finished before you arrive. They're either going to have killed a couple of your teammates, they're going to disengage the fight, and your impact in the fight is not going to change the outcome of it. And more often than not, you'll just find you TP in, the fight's over, maybe you get one kill, but you have to awkwardly walk back to your side lane, catch the wave, and you're dropping a ton of pressure when you could be using your TP with a lot more impact. And the biggest thing I want to teach you for having a good TP flank is setting a condition for your TP. If X happens, I'll TP in. So for example, if the enemy bot lane's pushing, if they use X spell, Nautilus Hook, or if they hit the bot tower, I'll TP in. Don't just TP in reactionary when your bot lane's getting hit. Set a condition. So same for Dragon. If they cross this bush, if they cross this line, I'll TP in, or if they use this spell. If you set a condition for your TP, if you plan it out ahead of time, more often than not, it's going to be a lot more successful. So I have a couple examples here from recent solo queue games, and in this game I'm playing Camille. Everyone on my team is playing poorly, so of course the onus is on me to play extremely well, and this Nidalee you see on your screen right now is a 1k shutdown. So here he's killing both of my bot lane, and it could be very tempting for me, or my mid and ADC, could be very tempting for me to TP in as soon as he gets hit by the spear, because of course he doesn't have his dodging feed on, he got hit by it. It could be very tempting for me to TP in, try to kill this Nidalee, who has flash by the way, but here I'm holding it. My condition for TPing in is if he jumps over this wall, I'm going to TP in, because even now, if I TP'd as soon as he used that W, he could just walk back towards mid tower, he might have to flash, but I'm going to completely give up all my pressure in the side lane. I'm holding on to it, and then this millisecond he jumps over this wall, I TP in, because now I know he's fully committed. Even if he flashes, I can catch up to him, and here I'm pretty sure I ulti because I know he's got flash, just to 100% guarantee the kill, and I get a 1k shutdown, right? And I actually use that to end up carrying this game, where if I TP'd in before that Nidalee had fully committed, there's a very high chance he survived that play, and Kassadin will get this bot tier 2 for basically for free. However, because I set a condition if Nidalee uses this spell in this way before I TP'd, it had a lot more success. So I have another example here. In this game, I'm playing Aatrox. In mid lane, there's quite a lot of action going down. It's one of those sloppy 2-for-1 fights we talked about, where of course I don't want to be TPing in. Couldn't anyway, I was a bit busy. But here, the condition I set for TPing in is if the enemy team hits my mid tier 2, I'm going to TP into this play. Because it's really important from this point in the game where I'm really strong not to waste my first TP. Because if I TP'd in uncalculated and it didn't work out, Pantheon is going to have an opportunity to ult my teammates while I'm catching the side wave, which is something I really want to avoid. So here I've been staring at the map the whole time. The condition I set is if they hit this mid tier 2, I'm going to TP in, which is exactly what happened, and it did end up actually working out. Now, to be honest, even if I reactionary TP'd in this example, it probably would have worked, right? Because they fully committed to the tower, didn't really matter. If the second I recalled I TP'd in, it still would have worked. The point I'm trying to make is that if you have a reactionary TP mindset, it is probably going to work around half the time, maybe even 60% if you're good at it, but you're never really going to be able to grow as fast as possible that way, where if you set clear conditions for your TPs, if X happens, I'll TP in, it's going to work out most of the time, to be honest, but even in the times that it doesn't work out, you can review the game back and see why was my condition wrong, what was wrong with it, and adjust your thinking, adjust your thought process to the point where you're setting better and better conditions in every game you play until it gets to the point where almost all of your TP flanks are going to be quite clean. So to quickly summarize, the best way to improve at TP flanking right away and also in the long run is to set clear conditions for your TP. If this happens, if they use this spell, if they cross this line, I'm going to TP in. That's going to give you the best result short term and also long term overall, so make sure you look to implement this to your gameplay instead of just reactionary TPing every time. Up next, we'll be covering multiple flankers. Now, multiple flankers can be a bit risky if you don't know the conditions to do so. Because let's say, for example, you're playing a solo queue game, you're playing Aatrox, you have an Akali mid, and he's looking to flank, and you join him on the flank as well, it can be very easy for the enemy team to actually engage on your team, because your team is going to be a 3-stack. So if you have multiple flankers, keep in mind it's very easy for your team to get engaged on, because it's not going to be more of a 4v4 standoff situation. Now, in this example here, it's a T1 game, where Zeus is looking to flank on Aatrox, very standard, and as you can see, Keria is also flanking on Rakan. Now, the reason they do this, the reason they use multiple flankers in this game, is because if you look at the T1 backline, they have a Xayah, very safe. Xayah has flash, she has ulti, she's not going to die in a hurry, even if the enemy team engaged on her while Rakan was getting in flank position and Aatrox, and they also have an Akali. Where of course Akali with flash, ulti W, she's not going to die as well. So in this game there is zero threat of their backline getting engaged on, which is why they go for the multiple flanker style. They use flanking from one way, which made the enemy team respect him and lean up. And they also had carrier flanking from the other side, and there was no threat from his team from getting engaged on. Where in solo queue, this is not always going to be the case. Your backline might be playing Jinx or Kog'Maw, they might be quite vulnerable, so it's very important you watch out for the other flankers on your own team to see what they're doing, and decide ahead of time if you're okay with that. If you're okay to have multiple flankers, if your Jinx is 0-6, doesn't really matter as much if he dies anyway, then that's fine. But for the most part, if your backline is playing quite well, and you have and they're not very self-sufficient, if they're not playing a champ like Xayah, very safe champion, and you have another flanker on your team, it can be very good to actually just play front to back and let your other teammates do their job. And yet again, I'll show another example from a recent solo queue game of mine, and in this game I have a Samira AD carry, who's not very self-sufficient. She's quite easy to kill if she gets dived on. However, in this game she has been playing quite poorly. She's quite weak. The enemy AD carry has been playing team fights and lane a lot better than her, so in my mind the enemy AD carry, the enemy backline, is a lot more valuable than mine. So I'm actually fine to have multiple flankers in this game. Now, as you can see, my Nico support, looking for a flank position, and here I could have looked at front to back with the Samira. As you can see, surely she gets engaged on by Alistar, but I decided it's more valuable to let her get killed and play to flank the enemy backline instead, even though we have multiple flankers. So if you look to have multiple flankers, and your AD carry is not a self-sufficient champion like Xayah, keep in mind they are almost always going to die, but it has to be worth it, right? The exchange for letting her die is you and the multiple flankers have to kill their backline, who has a lot more value, who have been doing a lot more damage in the game, and as you can see with the multiple flankers, we're able to easily kill this Jinx and clean up the fight in exchange from our own backline's life. So to summarize, the conditions to having multiple flankers and allowing it to happen instead of front to backing yourself is either your backline is self-sufficient enough to survive if they get engaged on in time for you to catch up for the flank, or if your backline is a lot less valuable than enemy backline and you have real threat to kill them with multiple flankers, and those conditions are met, then it is fine to have multiple flankers. Just keep in mind if your backline is vulnerable and they're doing a lot of damage, they're quite strong, having multiple flankers can lead to their death, so more often than not it's best to play with them and allow the other flanker on your team to flank, or vice versa. Up next, we're going to be covering marking flankers. And what marking flankers is essentially is being a bodyguard for your backline by blocking the enemy team's flankers from approaching them. It's not always going to be the case where you're the strongest flanker in the game, or maybe you are. Maybe you are the strongest flanker, but they have an Akali or they have a Jax, and your backline is a lot more strong than the enemy team's backline, and in that situation, it might actually be better for you to block the flankers, mark them, and allow your backline to do their job. I've got a couple of examples here, and in this game, it's from a recent match we played from this year, where my backline is a lot stronger than theirs. I have a strong Zeri Yuumi, and here you can see Jax is trying to flank. So the second I see him on this ping, I changed my job. Originally, I was looking to stun the enemy team as they come into Dragon, but as soon as I saw Jax was approaching, I decided to mark him. I'm completely blocking him from approaching this fight, because I know it's going to be very hard for Zeri to do her job if Jax is able to reach it. So here I'm just hiding in this bush, stopping him from approaching, and I'm just trusting my team to play out the 4v4. Of course, in solo queue, you might be a bit more hesitant to do that, which is why there's a lot of conditions we'll go through in the summary. But here, as you can see, I'm just queuing Jax, just completely blocking him from approaching. Here, I even stun him to the wall and knock him away. Now, this entire fight, I've not allowed Jax to do anything, and now that I've knocked him away, of course, I can join the rest of the team, where that's kind of Poppy specific, but the main point is I blocked Jax completely from doing his job in this fight, and it allowed my backline the freedom for them to do their jobs. So I have another example here from the exact same game where we're looking to rush down the Baron and Jax of course looks to TP flank. So the second I see him TP in, I pull off the Baron, I'm looking to mark him all over again, looking to block him from approaching this Baron, stun him into a wall, knock him away, just like before. Where unfortunately in this fight we actually ended up losing. My Zeri got overconfident, he made a mistake, and we actually ended up losing this fight. However, I gave my backline the best chance to play out this situation, where I completely removed Jax as an equation, removed the flank, denied him completely, and then I was able to be a part of this fight myself first, because even if you're not playing Poppy, and you don't have the ulti, you're still going to have the option to arrive to the fight first if it looks good, because you're always going to be between your teammates and the guy that you're marking, between the flanker. So if it looks good, if your team is fully committed to a fight and you've blocked them for, let's say, 20-30 seconds, if you've blocked them until the point where your team is committed to the 4v4, then you can look to join your team afterwards. You don't always have to just fully mark it and make the fight a 4v4 the entire time, because you're going to be closer to the action. You can commit if it looks good. Just keep in mind your top priority is stopping this flanker from approaching. So to summarize marking flankers, before you look to flank every time, no matter what, even if you're playing a champion with good flanks, think about the enemy team's flankers as well. Because there's going to be games that you run into where it's actually better for you to mark the enemy team's flankers and stop them from doing their job than it is for you to get a good flank off yourself. For our next topic, we're going to be covering picking your fight location, because it's going to be a lot easier to get the best possible flank if you know exactly where you're going to be flanking from ahead of time. So to paint the picture, let's say you're entering the mid game and Dragon is the next objective. You really want to be at that objective before it spawns, because you don't want to be in a situation where Dragon's already up, the enemy team's got full control of it, they're starting it, and you're awkwardly walking in trying to get to a flank position, while your team's also walking into their vision as well. It's really important that you get there ahead of time. Now, how much time? It really depends. It depends on what you're playing against. So, normally, you really want to be fixing your side wave before you head to the dragon, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're in a flank position. Let's say you're here 45 seconds before dragon spawns, and the enemy Tryndamere just pushes your wave all the way under tier 2. And then you have to either base an answer and give the enemy team the dragon, which you wasted your time for, or you have to give them the top tier 2, which I strongly recommend against. So for the most part, you really want to be making sure you've pushed the side wave all the way under the tier 2 before you head down to this dragon. Now, how long you need before you hit to the dragon, it really depends on the champion you're playing and the champion you're playing against, and also the team comps, but for the most part, to try to simplify it for you, the champion you're versing is the most important. So let's say you are up against an Ornn. You could probably push this under tower around 75 seconds before, maybe 60, and then head all the way to dragon. You're going to be fine. You're going to be there ahead of time. And what's the worst thing he's going to do? Push a couple waves slowly under tower, and then he's going to take a long time to break this. And he's playing Ornn, by the way. He's probably not going to go for the tier 2. He's probably just going to fix one wave and follow you to the dragon fight. So against Ornn, you can look to move around 75, 60 seconds before, and you're going to be fine. But if you're up against a strong side laning champion, so let's say, like we're talking about before, Tryndamere, maybe Trundle or Jax, you really don't want to be leaving 75 seconds before, as they're going to have time to push this wave all the way under the tower and pressure it. So against those champions, I would recommend around between 30 and 45 seconds that you just hit this wave under tower, and then you're heading towards the dragon. You can do a little bit longer if you have TP, because I don't recommend TPing into the dragon fight if you're versus a strong side laning champion. It's a lot better for you to arrive to the dragon fight, do what you need to do, start the fight, get it done, and then TP back to side before they can reach that tier 2. So it's really important you hold your TP up against strong side laning champions, because it's going to give you a lot longer to leave the tower and head to the objective in time. Now, as for the specific location that you want to be flanking from, of course it's going to vary from game to game, how strong you are, the champs in the game. A lot of those are variables that you're going to have to learn from experience, but I can give you some pointers. Where, to give an example, let's say a dragon fight's breaking out and your team is fully top river and the enemy team is bot river. Now, I recommend against going for these super wide flanks around the back, unless you know that you're 100% unseen. Because if they know you're doing a super wide flank, they can either engage on you or engage on your team, and as you can see, it's really hard for you to follow each other up and help out. However, if you are completely unseen, you've swept their whole jungle, they don't see you, and you're able to sneak into this bush, go for a flash out from surprise, of course it's going to be good. But if you get spotted on the way by a ward, by a champion, I recommend going for a flank which is more likely from the side. So you can flank from here or from here, depends on your champion or if you have flash or not, but it's going to be good to flank from an angle where your team can follow you up, where we saw in that tier 1 example before where he was playing Aatrox, where he was looking to flank here and his teammates were all here. If he got engaged on, they can follow him up, and if they got engaged on, he'll be there. But if he went for a super wide flank, let's say for example around the back here, really hard for them to help each other. In the case of emergency, where they get engaged onto each other, and it's pretty hard for them to get there unseen, to be honest, in the middle of the lane. So for the most part, I recommend going from either the side. So for Baron, let's say your team's fighting up here, trying to do Baron, they're walking in, you can look to flank here, it's close enough to help your team, or from here, but I recommend against going for these super wide flanks around the back, of course, unless you're unseen. Now, another good flank position is if the enemy team is stuck under tower, your team's fully playing for it, and you see people are showing on sideways, then of course you can look to flank tier 1. As you can see, it's really easy to follow each other up, which is the main theme I want to get at. When you're looking to choose your location where you want to be flanking from, pick a location where it's easy for you to help your team in an emergency, group up with them, or vice versa, unless you're going to be completely unseen and you're really strong and you can go for that complete 1v5 hero play, of course do so. But if you get spotted, keep in mind it's going to be a lot higher probability play to flank from the side where your team can help you in the case of the emergency. So I went a bit overboard there drawing on the screen, but to try simplify it for you, if your team is fighting upriver on dragon side, and the enemy team is fighting downriver, you want to be flanking from these two angles, which is more of a flank from the side. You can look to flank here in some situations, depends on how strong you are, but for the most part, these side flanks are going to be really beneficial for you. Or if you're looking to fight on Baron, the enemy team is upriver, your team's fighting downriver, you want to be flanking from these two angles, very similar to before. You're flanking from the side, you're close enough to your team in case so that they can follow you up during your engage, during your flank engage, or if you get engaged on, they're close enough to engage on the enemy team and help you out. But you're not too close to your team that is basically a front to back and they can staunch all 5 of you at the same time with their tanks. I'll do the exact same for the reverse positions, where if your team is fighting downriver on dragon side, similar flank positions, and same for if your team is fighting upriver on baron side. So I have an example here from a solo queue game a while back where around 45 seconds before this objective spawned, I made sure I was bot pushing out the wave so that I could be in my flank position before it's up, or around about the time that's up. In here, as you can see, it's spawning, and I'm going to be looking to get into my flank position. So I'm pinging where I am right now, because I want my team to be fighting downriver, because I know I want to be flanking the opponents when they enter from upriver. But I do see an opportunity. Zeraf enters here, and I'm able to get a good cheese off. And as you can see, I'm in the flank position. I'm cutting him off from joining his team, where even if he was grouped up with his team, I would have flanked from up here where the scrying plume is, and made it really hard for the enemy team to walk in. For my next example, I wanted to showcase a situation where it is good to go for one of those really deep hero flanks because I know almost 100% that I've remained unseen. Whereas you can see I'm sweeping my way into this jungle, I know they haven't spotted me, and here I will see the Xayah go through the Hex Gate, and the way she's moving just makes me feel like she doesn't see me, especially now. So I get to this bush and I'm a bit hesitant right now because I'm not sure if they can see me until they place their ward. As soon as they use this ward, I know 100% they don't have a ward in this push, because why else would they ward over the wall when they already see me? So there's a really good chance that I've snuck into this push unseen, so now it's time for me to get this really deep flank off, right? So they can't even see my ulti, Xayah doesn't have time to react to it with her ulti, and it's a really clean double kill for my team. And as you can see, she does have her ulti, but she couldn't see me because I swept my way into the jungle, and the way their body language was, the way they were placing wards, I knew almost guaranteed that there was no ward in that bush. I knew I was 100% unseen, so I didn't have to flank from a safe angle from the side. I could go for one of those really deep ones right around the back of them. Alright guys, I'm going to call it there, and if you're interested in learning more team fighting skills, keep in mind I will be making a complete team fighting guide later on. The only reason I'm holding out until doing so is because in the next season they're going to be completely changing the terrain of Summoner's Rift. I'm going to wait until then, because that's going to change the way team fights are played out. But if you'd like to see me cover other team fighting concepts, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.